So I do a lot of mandalas. I do majorly a lot of mandalas, but I like to experiment with mediums. So I like, but majorly now it's watercolors, but acrylics, wash, paper. I do a lot of stuff. So today we're going to talk about patterns in watercolor. This is something which I really enjoy doing, and it is a little challenging, but it's also very therapeutic. So if you have checked out the reference image, this is what it will look like. Okay, so this is a mandala entirely painted in watercolors with no pencil, no guide underneath, just the circles. So any mandala artist over here, I think this will be in your lane if you have done this before. But so we'll be painting a small mandala just with watercolors. I'll walk you through some simple patterns which you can do directly with watercolors. You don't need a pencil at all. Then I'll show you how to draw the guide, and then we can start with drawing the mandala composition also. So it's a lot of fun. It looks a little challenging, but it's actually a lot of fun to do it. So first thing, we're going to talk about supplies. Okay, so watercolors very important. So I'm using my Thoovi half pan set here. You can see I've used it a lot. That's why it looks this, but I love it. I'm going to even be using this half pan set or half pan color also because I love that blue color over there. Brushes, I'm going to use just one brush, not multiple. It can be a size 4 or a size 5, any round brush that you have with you. That will be more than useful. So it's either of these brushes. The thing is, you're not going to use the entire brush. All you're going to use is the tip of your brush. So the tip of the brush is the important part in this watercolor mandala. As for landscapes or wet on wet washes, you use the whole brush. Here we're going to use the very tip of the brush. So there's going to be a lot of emphasis on brush control. So if you have done brush calligraphy or a brush pen calligraphy, so you'll understand what I'm talking about. So it's important to have a nice sharp edge to the brush. So a size 4 or a size 3, whichever you have lying around, that will be perfect for this. Even if you have a slightly fatter brush, if the tip of it is a pretty sharp tip, it will be perfect for this. I'm using an A5 watercolor sheet today. I'm using a hot press paper. So I'm guessing all of you know the difference between cold press and hot press paper. So I'm using hot press because for watercolor mandalas, you don't need texture. I want a nice smooth texture. So the mandalas it's easier to draw on it. I'm not using cold press or heavy texture paper because otherwise your brush strokes will be it'd be very rustic and all. It'll still look good, not denying it, but using a nice smooth paper, 300 GSM hot press paper will make your mandala shine through. So that's something I would always advise. I'm using A5 size here, but you can use any size you have, A4, or if you want to make a bookmark or anything you want, you can do that. So that's my recommendation, is to use something really smooth, and anything about 200, 250 GSM and preferably 300 GSM. But since you're not going to be doing a lot of wet on wet, even 200, 220, 250 also will work. I also have some spare paper here just to practice the patterns before we get started. Just to test the colors that I'm going to be using over here. I have some spare paper. Your compass, just for the guides, just simple guides, nothing else. No grids. There's no grid composition here. It's only the compass paper. You can draw the circles, and obviously your water, some tissues, and if you want a nice clean border, you can use some washi tape or masking tape if you have lying around. You can put it around your sheet for a nice clean white border, but I'm not going to be using. And that's it. That's all the supplies you need. The important is your watercolors and your paper and your brush. So if you have that with you, that's perfect. So before I get started with the actual mandala, I'll run you through some simple exercises that you need to do to kind of warm up your hands before you start doing a mandala with watercolors. So since I'm not going to be using a pencil, right, to draw the guides, the very important thing is to first practice your strokes on a paper before you start to improve your muscle memory. It's very important to do that. So before you start doing any sort of fine brushwork or fine mandala brushwork, uh, it's always important to get some practice going on, because your hand needs to flow very easily, right? You need to have control over your brush also. That's very important. So that's the first thing we will do, is to do some sort of a warm-up exercise where we draw some lines, we draw some circles, and then we'll draw the shapes that we will use to construct the mandala, and then a little bit of how you can detail it, and finally drawing the composition. Another thing with watercolor mandalas is you don't need to detail it as much as the pen mandalas, which we usually draw. So pen mandalas, you can go very intricate because you're using really, really fine pens. So you can go to a lot of detailing. But with watercolor mandalas, you can keep it very simple and straightforward. And some of the most important, most simple ways of achieving that effect is by either filling up the spaces, or by using lines, or using very basic shapes. That's, if you notice, that's how you kind of, if you have to deconstruct this mandala that I have drawn, that's how you can do it. So it's all basic shapes and different colors. So so today I'm going to go with a nice blue palette, but this is one I did with yellow. So it's all basic shapes, simple lines, a lot of filling, but the end result will always look very pretty. And so that's a very important thing you can remember with watercolor, mandalas, and patterns is you don't have to go very, very, very detailed. You can leave it at very simple detailing, and it will look very, very pretty in that way also. So something like this. The final effect, yes, always looks nice and complex, but if you go down and break down the pattern, it's simple shapes and simple patterns that will finally compose your mandala. So if you have your brush and your paint lying around, let's get started. As I said, the first few minutes we are going to be just practicing the basic shapes, the basic lines, just to kind of warm our hands up so that our hands are ready to kind of take in this one of drawing. So I'm going to be using a nice dark blue. And yes, if you feel, for the final mandala, if you feel like, okay, no, I can't directly, draw with a pencil, draw with a paintbrush, you can have your underlines drawn with the pencil, and then go over it with your brush. So I'm going to take some of this blue color, and to see how I'm going to be using this, how I'm using the brush is very important. Hold it just like a pen. Right? Hold it just like a pen, hold it a little close to the tip. So that gives you more control over your strokes, and that's very important. So when you're painting watercolors, you can be very loose with your brush. When you're doing lots of loose strokes, you can go really, really crazy with the brush. But for this, it's important you hold it, like how you hold a pen or a pencil and how you write with it. Essentially, that's the same way. And that itself will give you a lot of control. Right, so take any piece of paper, any watercolor sheet that you have with you, and we'll just practice some lines, the upstrokes, some downstrokes, just to get a good control over the brush, which is that is very, very important when it comes to painting watercolor mandalas. So the first thing is drawing your downstrokes and your upstrokes. So I'll show you how you can get those thin lines and how you can get those thick lines. Okay, and that is very simple. It's the amount of pressure that you kind of put on your brush. So hold it very lightly. Don't put a lot of pressure on it. Hold it really softly, really like how you hold a pencil or a pen when you're writing. Hold it the same way. So, and just draw straight lines and very lowest pressure. So you get nice straight lines, and you don't put much pressure. You just load up your brush, and in case you want slightly thicker lines, you obviously push your brush a little more down. But if you want thin strokes, you just gently drag your brush across the paper. But otherwise, If you want thick lines like these, then you obviously push your brush as much as you can down, but not too much. Uh, just a little bit. I'm going to change my brush. So very gentle strokes, very gentle. So thin lines is with very less. Huh? And if you want thick lines, you just push the body of the brush down. So, and it's just like how you hold a pen, as I said, same thing. So this, practicing this multiple times helps you improve your muscle memory. And whenever you sit down to draw a mandala with watercolors, it's always useful to do this as an exercise. So you can do this multiple times just so that you get control of your brush. Very less pressure, gently hold it down. And if you want fatter lines, just push the body of the brush down. So this is a very important exercise whenever you're doing mandalas. And this is like one of the most common ways you can use to fill in the shapes that you will be constructing. So let's go to the next thing. And in the same way, you can practice even your horizontal lines. So we did vertical. You can even practice your horizontal lines the same way. And same thing, very less pressure, and just drag your brush across. And here you need to load your brush also with a lot of color. So same thing, same this one. If you want a little thicker, you press the brush down. If you want thin lines, you go very gently on the paper. And thick. So this is how you can even add that sort of detailing to your mandala using thick and thin lines in various degrees of pressure. So next is the most common is your circle, and it's a very simple way to draw a circle in watercolor. So just take a brush, and it's basically composed of two C's, right? Two C shapes to form your circle. So let's draw one, and then you draw the other one. And this again is a great shape to use for a lot of detailing and adding borders. And as I said, hold the brush very, very gently. And it's one C and another C. And another. So these are like this is the basic shape you're going to be using to fill in other patterns. You're going to use it to fill in, add like if you want to add a border or a division between two sections of your mandala, you're going to use these shapes is something you're going to be using. The other one is your most common one is using a triangle. So again, one line down and another line down. And again, I'm being very gentle with the brush. Don't put a lot of pressure. And that's a fact that I'll keep saying in the session, is to hold the brush as gently as possible. Treat your brush with a lot of love. That's all. So one line up and one line down. This is your next shape. So as I said, practicing these helps improve your brush control, which is very important. Another very common pattern that you will be, or a construction that you will be using, is the leaf motif. And again, very simple, similar way. So now you can decide how broad or small you want, right? So this is quite big. If you want smaller, you do it a little more closer to each other. And if you want some really fat ones, you will go really wide. And sometimes what you can do is also actually go a little thick on the exterior lines and then have a detailing a little more thinner lines, that's also all right. And yes, your shapes are going to go a little off, like little squiggly wiggly, little scribbly. It is going to become. That is also okay. It takes some time to develop a little bit of brush control. So just practice these shapes, and yes, sometimes it can go a little off. So that's also all right. So this is a very common way shape that we are going to be using a lot. Again, if you notice, the next one is your very common. We have done your lines. We have done this, and the very common is the nice fat semicircles. So again, start from the bottom and go up, and it's an upside down C basically. Or a U, yes, an upside down U. These are nice fat ones which can be easily filled with detailing. So this is another pattern that we'll be using very often. The next, the next shape is obviously a thinner version of this one. So again, thin. And go very slow. Okay, when you're drawing the main outlines of your mandala, go very slow with the patterns. When you're drawing, especially, go very slow. So these are the thinner variants of the CU, and each one can be, as I said, there are multiple variations for each of them. And while constructing your mandala, you can decide which goes where as you keep drawing it. The next is next is the kind of the curly braces, which is sometimes a very scary thing to do. So I'm just going to show you how you can draw it. And another thing which I'll be telling you when we start doing it on the main paper is you should keep flipping your paper as you keep drawing, right? So now we're just practicing. But maybe once you start the mandala, you can kind of, flip your paper to get a better control of your drawing. So that's a very handy tip you can keep in mind. But that's again based on your comfort also. So I will show you when we do the main artwork, like how turning the pages all over will give you more control over the shape of your mandala, and even the control over drawing the pattern. It gives you a lot of control there also. So it's a very useful tip. So it's useful to keep kind of turning the paper here and there to give you that, whichever the place is convenient for you. Yes, but be careful to not, kind of smudge your paint. That's all. Just be careful of that. So when I'm drawing that curly brace kind of thing, yes, it's always open to getting, slightly off always because of the nature of its shape. But we'll give it a simple try. So I'm going to keep this here so that I can refer to it. So again, I'm just going to draw a hypothetical, line just for me to get an idea how it goes. And so you start at a point, right? And then you start with the first curl and you go down. And again, go very slowly. And you start with the second curl and you go down. So let's do one more. So you start from a point and you come. Let's do one curl and you start at another point and you do one more. So this is how you usually do it. So this shape is a pretty challenging shape at times. It always can get really messed up. So let's try another one. So once more, just draw one line this way and one line this way. And same thing, one line like this. It's like drawing two S's which some forms your curly braces. This shape takes some practice. So what I'd advise is first draw it with a pencil and then go over it with a paintbrush. So if but it will not harm if you can practice the shape more. So this one again takes some time to master, but it's a very nice shape to use across your mandala. So these are the most common actually outlining shapes that you're going to use to construct your mandala, and then fill each of these up with different patterns. So as I said, some of the easiest way of filling up any of these shapes is to just color it, right? So this is where, if you can see here, so you can see that I've just drawn this shape, right? That shape you notice over here. And I've just colored it in. And that's also okay. It looks very pretty. You can even go over this with a pen or with another color or with even gouache to even add some detailing over here, and that will look fabulous. But you don't, as I said, have to go really extensive with the detailing of these mandalas, because even if the simplest of these looks very, very gorgeous. So one of the techniques of filling up is to just color it in. So as I will show you here, you just draw another shape inside and make sure you're always loaded with color, and then just fill it in. So this is method number 1. You just fill in the shape so that, and you don't have to worry so much about detailing. And this is applicable to all sorts of shapes. So you can even do the same thing here, right? You can just draw this upside down U inside and then just fill it up like you can see over here. There you go. So sometimes filling it up is the easiest way to add a lot of fun to your mandala. The next thing you can do is make it like a leaf. This one especially. What you can do is add a line from the center, and then as a leaf, just draw the lines from the center to the sides. And again, since you're using just the same brush, you have to be very careful with the detailing. Otherwise, it could get a little too cluttered. Or what you can do is you can shift to a liner brush or a size 0, 1, whichever is more convenient if you want to get into a little more extensive detailing. But that's something I would recommend. So let me just show you. So this is another way of filling it up. So you just add lines like a leaf, add a center line, and add lines, diagonal lines from the center like a leaf. So that's another way of filling it up. The same thing can be even done for your bottom shapes. And for these, you can just leave it alone. You don't have to even detailing. But if you want to get into it, you can even just draw some lines over here. And be very careful to not touch the sides of the shape. So this is one way of doing it. The next pattern that I would like to show, and we could use it when we are constructing also. I'm sure all of you have put mehendi in your lifetime. So if you're going for functions or festivals. So one of my favorite patterns to keep using is this one also. This thing you see over here. This kind of mehendi-esque doodle, if I like to call it that way. So these are also great ways to fill in like large sections of your mandala. So if when you're constructing a mandala, which we'll go to next, if you have a large space where you don't know what to fill up with, you can use these patterns, which can make it easier to fill up the whole space. So let me show you how to do that also. So same thing. Let me turn the paper like this a little bit. So I'm going to stand and come a little bit closer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some paint, right? So I'll start with the circle. right? Start with the circle and I will pull it in from the bottom here. So from the down, start and pull up the shape and form a circle, form a colored circle in between. So let me do this again. So draw your circle first. It can be a slightly bigger circle, and I usually go with the circle. This is too small, and form the pull a line from it. Let me do a slightly bigger one. So this is your circle, and you can pull it from anywhere. So I'll pull a small line from here following this curve, and then I will just circle it in and I'll have the shape ready. So use this as your base, as a starter, and then we draw a border to this. And then the shape you used over here, this upside down use, maybe thinner versions of that, a smaller version of that. And then draw one more line, and this can be extended as much as you can, so you can even continue this further. So what I'll usually do is end the shape and then start another shape in another orientation, start the same thing in another orientation. So that will be this way. So I'll start it from the top. Let me pick some color. And following the similar, I draw these lines, use shapes, and then that's it. So this is another kind of a filler, section filler kind of a pattern that you can use. Look, when you have a very big section that you don't know how to fill. If you don't want to, then you can just divide the section into smaller ones and fill it with other kind of patterns. And one last shape that I would like to show you before we get started with the construction is it's like not the real lotus, but just a lotus motif that you can use, that I have used here. So the one you see here as a filler between these shapes, it's not, as I said, a true lotus. It's just a lotus motif that you can use for all your mandalas. So start with your center petal, draw it like a leaf, right? And then I'm not, as I said, not drawing the true lotus, I'm just drawing the motif. So start from the, I always go to the center with these, and the number of petals can vary based on the design that you're going to draw, or based on how that your design is shaping. This can be, in multiple sizes. So in some drawings, you may leave it at just 1 and 2, kind of like a lotus bud, or in some you may even do this, or in some cases you will obviously draw the third shape. So this shape can also be used as a great way to fill up your patterns that you draw here. In a way I mean is, so let me just draw a nice big U to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So you have this big shape. So what you can do is find like a rough center of this shape, right? Draw a smaller semicircle and do the same lotus thing you saw there. And always come to the center, the bottom center. You always come there And this is a great way to even fill up your shapes. And you can use a variation of this. A variation of this is a rounder version. So for that, you start, it's like a kind of like, it's like a teardrop shape, but the other way around. Start from the bottom, go to the top, round it, and you come back down, right? And again, start from the edge of the turn of the circle and get this down, and same thing on this way, and the same thing. So these can be used loosely like this, or it can be used in a similar way here to kind of fill in the shapes that you have. So this is the basics of patterning with watercolors, and for sure you can extend this to a lot of different shapes and a lot of different patterns, but these basics is the best way to get started, and you can definitely evolve these into bigger patterns and different kinds of patterns, but these are the basic ones that you will be using once you start drawing watercolor mandala. So I'm going to push this aside and I will show you how I draw the grid for my mandala, and then I'll give you some tips on how you can even construct this. So for now, I'm going to keep this in this position. So I'm not using the washi tape for this, but I might just draw a light border so that I know where I have to start and finish, and also a reference point for my a center point for my grid. So this is just a reference line. I'm not. So same thing on this side. And I will do same on this side. It's just a border, but as I said, you can even use tape. So I don't.
Questions, just a second. If you all have any questions, you can leave a message on the chat box. I will convey the same to Swathi so that she can address your queries as and when you have any questions.
Absolutely. Anybody has any questions? If you want me to stop here, I can pause for a minute and answer any doubts if you have, or you can even ask me later and I can answer. So, any questions? Anybody? Okay, no, nothing. Fine. Okay, so let's get started with drawing the grid. So I don't usually take any particular radius when I'm drawing because I kind of go pretty loose. But if you're keen on starting with a particular radius for your for the pattern, you can always start with something like about 3 centimeters is ideal. So you will start wherever your point is. That's right over here. This will be the starting where you start. You just need this starting radius. After that, it's just about extending your compass and drawing as many circles as you can. Another thing that I like with watercolor mandalas is I usually like to start from the corner because it looks very, very pretty when it's drawn from the corner. But you can obviously, like a traditional mandala, even start at the center of the page, find your center and start drawing it from there, and no need of grids. You can just construct using your watercolors. So I'm going to just start with this 3 centimeter radius over here and just, so I think you can see this, right? Yeah. So I'm just going to start with this 3 centimeter radius, and then from here I'm just going to extend my compass and keep drawing the lines. Another thing, if you want to protect the corner of your sheet, you can put in some masking tape or washi tape so that your sheet is protected from the poking of the poke mark of the compass. So that's something you can keep in mind. So from here onwards, I don't use any radius. I'll just keep drawing a few circles, semicircles till I am satisfied with how much I want. So there is 3. There is another section. Another thing you can do is, another important thing here is, remember to keep these lines as light as possible. I'm doing it a little dark so you can see it. Keep it as light as possible. If not, you can use watercolor pencils in the color of the mandala you're going to do. So, for example, if your mandala is going to be yellow and orange, use a yellow color watercolor pencil or a red color or an orange color watercolor pencil to draw those lines. So you don't have to even erase once you're done. You can follow those lines and be done with it. So in my case, I'm going to use blue. So I can even use a blue watercolor pencil to draw these circle guides. But whichever color you're using, the same color you can use. And I like to keep the circles, as I said, pretty loose. So I'm just going to, I don't really go for any specific radius at all. So if you have any questions while I draw my guide, you can drop it in the chat and I'll be happy to take it. So I think I'll keep it this much. Yeah. So this radius can also be reduced. So I took 3 centimeters, but you can even reduce it to 2, so you'll get slightly smaller ones. So I'm going to even actually reduce it to 2 centimeters and make it a single one. Right. So that's it. This is the only guides you'll be needing for constructing your mandala. So you don't. So if you are familiar with drawing mandalas before this, you know the guides that we usually draw. So we don't really need to draw that many guides over here. It's these are enough because once you start filling it up with your patterns will start becoming your guides for each section. So I'll explain that when we get started. Any questions? Anything?
Yeah, Swathi Ritambara has a question asking, can we go ahead and start doing the mandala with any pattern?
Yes, you can start with any pattern. You don't have to follow any particular guide. So as I said, free with mandalas can be as free flowing as possible. If you have an idea or a visual like how you want your mandala, you can go ahead and start. No problem. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so next thing is what I tend to do is I usually kind of flip my book and start it in the reverse. So as I said, it makes it easier for me to construct. It gives me more control and I can keep my hand on the paper, as a guy, my hand has a lot of support here when I'm drawing the pattern. So it's easier for me to do it. But again, it's based on your comfort also. If you want to do it this way, continue doing it this way, but be careful to not smudge the layers that you are drawing here. Be careful of that, be mindful of that. Alternately, also keep a tissue or some sort of paper here to kind of act as your base here, so that's easier for you to draw from here. So to each is comfort, whichever is comfortable for you, do it that way. So I usually like to flip it this way. So I start it like this. So it gives me, if I'm doing several colors, if I am going to do like a gradation of colors like in this one that you see, I generally like to do it like this so I can keep an eye on the gradation of the colors. Like I used 3 colors here. So I can see that very clearly when I am drawing. So I'm going to use the same blue that I used there. I'm going to be using 2 shades of blue. So I'll be using those, but feel free to use any colors that you have with you to construct your mandala. And it can always be any color. You don't have to restrict your color choices. You can go for just a nice monochrome mandala. I'll give you an example when you talk about monochrome so that you understand what I'm talking about. So let me just flip monochrome. So this is one in various shades of blue. And the next one, this is the one that you're seeing. The picture that you saw is this one. And let me show you. Oh, where is that one? There is another one. Yeah. And this is fully done in one color, just one blue shade. So you can always choose the colors you want to do. You can do one color or you can do multicolor. That's totally up to you. So let's get started. So I'm going to be using two shades of blue, but if you're using red, yellow, feel free to use it, and let's get started. So as I said, load your brush with paint and ensure the tip is nice, sharp and pointy. Place the book or your paper the way you are comfortable with, and we can get started. So starting always is like an intimidation to many people. They get like, how am I supposed to start my mandala? I am a little clueless. So you can always start in various different ways. There is no specific rule. As I said, with mandalas, it's always good to be very free, very loose with their construction. So let's get started. So now the important things of drawing these guides is that it's useful for you to draw your borders with watercolors directly, right? If you are even more adventurous, you don't even have to draw these guides. You can directly even start drawing the mandala without even the guides. You can just be more. It can become more loose. There are a lot of chances for it to go way off, and that's a different type altogether. But you can. It's always useful to have these guides around, so at least your mandala remains symmetric and it's neat. So that's the only difference. So I'm going to just draw this line first, of this circle first, and again be very gentle with your strokes. Go very slowly, and as I said, you have your pencil line, so you have the support over here, right? So I'm just even going to draw this one because I'm going to fill this up. I'm going to do very slowly. Again, I said watercolor mandalas shouldn't be rushed. Go very slowly. So now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to draw a smaller semicircle, and then since I have this border, I'm just going to fill it up, and then I'm going to draw just one more following the shape of the previous one. And one more to kind of get a clear definition. And now I'm going to do these U shapes. And so now I have these shapes too, right? So now what I will do is I'll draw a slightly bigger, fatter version of these, and I can use these shapes as the base of my next one. So I'm going to use two of them. So I'll start here. And I will come to the second one. So, and following the curvature of each of the shapes, right? Following the curve of the semicircle that you're doing is how you form the layers, shape over the pattern over here. So I'm just going to give a little bit of detailing. I'll just draw a circle within this. Fill this up. just draw a line. And go very slowly, no rush. And just fill this here. So now let me take this color again, and I'm just going to draw a smaller of this U shape and fill it up in the inside. I'm going to draw this. And one more to kind of complete the shape. So that's one way of starting, but I'm sure you can start it in different ways. So I have another layer, and I'm not going to kind of color it. So the lines that we practiced in the first step is what I'm going to use here. So start with the edge over here. And if it becomes a little thick, it's okay. And as I said, you can keep turning your paper to whatever is convenient. So now following the curve of your semicircle, you can continue drawing these lines. So as I said, very less pressure if you want nice thin lines, and follow the curve of your lines. So you have another layer which is done here. Now you can just leave it like this, and if you want to add some alternate color shading to this, you can add colors to it also. I'm just going to leave it little plain. So let me load my brush and let me color this layer up, color this line, I'm sorry. So let's as I said, do it very slowly. This is a very slow process. So do it as slow as possible. And I'm going to draw a nice leaf shapes here. So let's just start from the bottom, come to the top, and keep following the shape of your circle. So this is another layer, and to add a little more kind of detailing, you can add smaller of these shapes over here on the top. And so this is the edge, and now you can fill this up. So as I said, filling up spaces is the best way to make it look quite intricate. And then you can even add further details to the colored sections using a white pen, or you can use a little bit of gouache also. So now I'm going to add shapes inside of this. So same thing, follow the previous shape that you see, and I'm just going to color it up again. So Let's do this. And so now these shapes you can, you can leave it as such. You can even, add some lines for extra detailing or even try to color it up. But let's do something else. We'll add a line to this here and a small circle on top. So same thing here. And this the same thing here. So this is another layer which is done. So let's again load our brush and we have this line here. Let's fill this up. And okay. I'm going to use some very nice, really simple triangles here. So now when I mentioned like using the previous layer as your base, so I'm going to use the end of this shape here and the beginning of this shape to actually form a triangle. So it's the end of the shape, the beginning of the shape, and the end of this to the beginning of this. Same thing here. So end of this shape to the end of this shape. So that's how I'm keeping track of the shape. So I am ending at this leaf motif and I'm using the end of the next leaf motif as the base. So same thing here. Same here. And the last one. So this kind of helps you kind of maintain that consistency with the that you get from drawing a grid is using your previous layer as an assistant to get the kind of get a little bit of perfection into your shapes. So but otherwise you don't look at perfection when you're doing this. So let me, and I'm just going to just draw not filled triangles but just these shapes. And again, be very careful and go very gently. Or what you can do is once you've finished drawing the different layers, you can use a thinner brush to go in for the detail. So down we go. As I go very slowly, very gently. So this is one more layer of your mandala done. So now again, let me draw this. Shape. So now what I'm going to do here is, if you remember, I showed you this one, this particular kind of a doodle. I'm going to try that out in this layer over here. So it's going to be relatively smaller, this section. So let's see how that goes. So have too much paint. So I'll start at the extreme bottom. So you draw a circle. You extend it out, color it up, and then two lines following it, then these little upside down U's, then close it up, and you can add some lines over here to kind of form the detailing for this. So let's repeat this again over here. Draw your circle, then at the end over here, follow the curve, draw around. Two lines that act as borders to the previous shape. Then the upside down views. And two more lines to close it up. So this kind of ties forms a nice concentric borders. Let me come a little close if you can see that. So it will form a nice concentric border around. So let's do the next one also. So let's color this, and so there might be sometimes your brush strokes might get a little thicker. That's okay. And then okay, I forgot to add the lines. And let's draw another one.
Swati,
Yeah.
there's a question from Ritambara asking, how do we cover up a mistake?
Okay, so couple of ways you can do that. So let it dry. Don't do anything when it's wet. Let your paint dry, and then you can use a if you're doing it on white paper, you can use a uniball gel pen to go over it. Number two, you can use a little bit of white color gouache. But this has to be done when your paint is dry. Don't do it when it's wet, right? When it's wet, there'll be a chances of your paint or your pen ink mixing with the paint, and it will just become very messy. So don't do that. Wait for it to dry. It's okay. Let it continue your painting. Finish it. Let your paint dry. And then wherever you go on wrong, use a white gel pen or you can use white gouache. That's all. Now that is only for white paper. If you're doing it on black, you use black pen. Yeah. That's the trick we always use. White pen or white gouache. So let's So that's okay. So my general tip also is to go very slow with these. So because obviously mandalas take time. So don't be in an extreme rush to finish this one. So do it as slow as possible. And yes, on some places, if you go a little thick or a little thin, it's okay. And let's finish this layer. So this is another layer that is done. So the next one, I'm going to keep it a little more simpler. So depending on how the mandala construction is going, you can decide whether you want to keep it more detailed or you want to keep it simpler. That's something you can think about when you're uh, constructing a mandal. And also, yes, as you keep practicing, you will also start getting a very visual idea of how you want your mandala to look like. Or sometimes you just go with it. That's how I do it usually. I sometimes have a visual picture of the colors that I want to use, but when it comes to the patterning, it kind of changes as you go through the different layers of the different circles that you have. Once you keep doing it, you'll think of something else, but you'll go in another direction. And that's sometimes it's okay. So let me again fill this up. I mean, so So now you see that we have a nice big section in this section. So again, there are two ways to go about this. One is to use any of the patterns or motifs to fill that layer, or if you want to go a little more adventurous, you can even do kind of like a galaxy painting there, and it will look very very pretty. Or you can just do some lotuses. You can do multiple things. So when you come to a nice big fat section in your mandala, you can go multiple ways. One is your patterns, drawing nice big patterns, like you can use either these lotuses or you can use any of these shapes. Draw nice big versions of them and then fill them up. Or if you are game for it, you can also fill the section up in a galaxy wet and wet wash. Use like a purple, use blues, use pinks to get a nice galaxy like effect. Fill it up and then continue drawing your sections. And when that section is dry, you can add some gold stars or you can add some white stars to the section. Okay, so let's do this. Let's add some lines over here. So I'm going to add some horizontal and vertical lines here. So just you can see how that is done. So I'm going to draw 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm going to leave some space and I'm going to draw the same 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines. I'm going to draw it here. Right? So give some space. And now in this space, you can draw lines. I'm going to just draw some diagonal lines so you can see how that is done. So I'm going to follow from here. And this is what I'm going to do. So again, leave some space. Draw your next set of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I'm going to change the orientation of the diagonal here to this way. Same thing. So let's continue with this. Leave some space. Draw your next set of 5 lines. And follow the similar orientation of your previous one to draw the diagonal lines. Again, leave some space, draw lines and the same diagonal lines. So again, yes, if some mistake happens here where you kind of draw the same thing, wait for the layer to dry, go over with the white pen or white gouache and then wait for that to dry and then go over that. So you have to give it a lot of drying time. Again, leave some space. Come back here, draw your next set of 5 lines. And I'm going to do this. Sorry. And now that I'm ending here, I'll just follow those lines to just finish it up. Okay, so now we have another section done. So as you keep finishing each layer, you can kind of see how your mandala kind of shapes up and starts looking pretty. So let's draw this shape. Sometimes, yes, it gets a little thick here, but that's okay. You will kind of blend it in with the pattern that comes in the previous layer, in this layer, which so this is done. So okay, so I'm going to use those the curly braced kind of thing over here. So again, I'm going to use reference here to help me out to kind of map the shape. So I usually, when I'm drawing it on a grid, I take about 4 sections. So these 4 sections, so from the starting of this section to the starting of this section is what I'm going to aim for when I'm drawing this, right? So let's start from the bottom here. Draw a curl line and then come to the top. So as you can see, I kind of extended it, but okay. This is something you have to do by eye. And this is how you kind of get the shape. So each layer that you draw in the previous becomes your base for the next. So now I've used 1, 2, 3, 4. So next 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of becomes the base for my next one. So let's draw this. So I know that it has to 1, 2, 3, 4. It has to end over here. 1, 2, 3, 4. It has to end here. So wish me luck. So be very, very careful when you're drawing this shape. So I think this is going to become slightly smaller, but yep, it's gone a little off, but it's okay. It's all right. And one more. So now you have a lot of space within each of these shapes to again fill it up. So I'm going to draw one more shape within it. And fill it with the lotus motif that I showed you. So I'm going to draw this is the first petal. And let me just refresh the paint a bit. And from the center, and fill it up in the middles. And I'm going to do the same on this side. And fill this up. So you have a nice filled kind of a lotus shape here. So now here, what you can do is you can again redraw the shape following the previous layer. Right, and keeping it very simple, I'm going to be using the U shapes, and I'm going to draw it in this reverse direction. So you can check this out. It's thinner ones, just so you can fill up the space. Color up wherever you have. So this is something I will be repeating all over. So draw the shape, and then start with the base shape in the center, and then finish this up. And again, follow the shape. So it is. This is a lot of repetitive pattern work. That's what makes a mandala. So that's why you need to have a little bit of patience while doing this. So again, the center line. And let's just quickly finish this. So this is a smaller one, so just the half of it. And the same thing on this side. Right, so this is another layer we have finished. So now I'm going to switch to a darker blue because I want to add two blues to the mandala. So since I can see there's a nice division coming up, is where I decided that I will kind of switch the colors a little bit. So I'm going for the nice dark blue. I'm going to border this first. Let's draw this. And I'm going to even kind of draw this shape, this line also. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use like the circles that I showed to be the nice kind of a border for the previous few layers. So circles, just circles, and fill up the gaps. And keep filling it up to form kind of like a nice so as I said, you can even continue with the same color which you're continuing, or change colors to add a nice nice colory mandala gradation. So I'm just using a slightly darker blue and adding this kind of like a border between the two different colors. So basic circles. And so once this is done, and so we have another layer which is kind of done. So that kind of acts like a border between these two layers. So now you can even, if you want, if you feel this looks a little too emptyish, you can use the same color and let it blend into the previous blue. You can add some lines, or you can add some of the U shapes just to make, if you want to make it look even more intricate, that's all. So next layer, we're going to add again these U shapes here and kind of blend these two layers. So you have the lines as your guide. So use the lines to determine the height of your shape and follow that to kind of draw the U shapes. So time to load the brush. And keep turning the paper for the comfort. And just keep filling this up. So this is one more layer done. And let's draw the line for this. So I'll also draw this border so that so we have these. So another thing you can do is also, if what you can also do is color these gems in between. Um, Again, that's a personal choice. If you want to add some lines, you can add some lines, or you can even add color this up. So again, it acts as like a nice colored striped border between each of these layers, right? So you can even do that. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to reuse. Now you can always start reusing the different shapes that you have used all throughout, right? So there's no need to really reinvent the wheel over here. Whatever shapes that you see in each of these, you can continue using them. So I'm going to go back and use the a fatter version of these. So I'm going to use two of them. And kind of come up with bigger versions of this. So I'm using two of the previous layer to kind of form the next one. So that's what I mean when you have to use the previous layer as your guide. So I'm using each of the previous shapes to kind of form as my base and the curvature of the semicircle. Okay, slightly off there, but I think that's right. And yeah, so let's quickly add some detailing. I'm just using another shape inside each of these, and let's draw this. And again, you don't have to go very into its detailing. What you can do is just draw a line and a circle here. So this forms the detailing here. And for these, so if you're intending to color this layer, what you can do is you can add some lines. So there is not a lot of heavy usage on the color over here. Right? You can add some lines on these layers. And then you can even color out the next strip. So let me just finish this up. So let's take this one. And be very careful with this detailing. Go very slowly. And so it's become a little thick here. That's right. I said we're not going very perfect. So and I'm going to so this is another layer that is done. And what you can do is nice. Now you can kind of I will kind of color this out. Just a little, just to add a little bit of interest. Just add some color here.
Is this the full pen you've used here, Swathi?
No, I'm using the
Half pen.
I'm using the half hands only. Yeah, the two blues in that.
Yeah.
I like those blues. They're very nice blues.
Thank you.
Okay. So this is how your mandala should kind of look like at this stage. I think I'm going to pause it here. So okay, I hope you guys enjoyed this because it's a very slow process because it's detail oriented over here. So this is so this is how it's looking like. So I've used like 2 shades of blues. So you can again so there are again endless possible. You can make it even bigger and more detailed, but I think I'll just pause it here for now. But yes, so guys, this is how you do patterning with watercolors. It is a little intensive, but it's a lot of fun once you keep getting into it with more detailing and all. But this is how the final artwork looks like. So I think that's it, Bhuvana. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Swati. Probably this is the first time I've seen somebody doing mandala like freehand without using any grids. I used to do henna. I
Okay.
started my journey doing henna.
Okay.
And seeing these patterns is bringing back all my memories now. So it's like very
Oh,
pretty.
I'm glad to see that. Thank you so much for this, and I hope you all enjoyed. And I can't wait to see all your recreations. And thank you so much for sticking on for
Yeah.
so long. um, yeah.
Anyone else painted along with Swathi?
Yeah, anyone has painted, even if it's a small portion, it's okay. I know it takes time. If anyone has painted,
I'll stop the recording.